Hi, this is Shannon at No Shelf Control. Thanks for joining me on the channel today. I am back for day 3 of the Tournament of Books, and we have 2 more books going head to head in the tournament in round 1. So the first thing I'd like to do is tell you about today's judge. His name is Adam Dalva. His writing has appeared in the New Yorker, the Paris Review, and the Atlantic. He serves on the board of the National Book Critics Circle and is the senior fiction editor of Guernica magazine. There are a few other things here about him. He is a graduate of NYU's Fiction MFA program, where he was a Veterans Writing Workshop Fellow. He is writer-in-residence at Brooklyn's Invisible Dog Art Center. I don't know what that means, and has received fellowships from Scotland's Harthenburn Castle, Iceland's Gilkenstan, the Vermont Studio Center, the Atlantic Center for the Arts, and Wild Acres. His graphic novel, Olivia Twist, was published by Dark Horse in 2019, and he also serves as a judge of the 2022 Story Prize. So that is Adam Dalva, and he is our judge for today. So let's talk about the 2 books that are up in the competition today. The first one is The 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida, and the second is Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. And we will talk about both of those books, and I'll go through the synopsis with you. And then we will talk about what the judge had to say about them and who he chose as the winner for this round. So this first one is The 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida, and I just love this cover. I love all the color. I love the hidden face in there. I love sort of the implication of what might be coming in the book, so that excites me. The book is by Sheyhan Karunatalaka. I'm giving that pronunciation a try. And let's see, it was published in August of 2022, August 4th, 2022. The publisher is Sort of Books, and it is 386 pages. Apparently, the setting for the book is Sri Lanka, which I guess goes back a little bit to that cover and what that might represent. And let's talk about the synopsis for The 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida. It says, Colombo, 1990. Maali Almeida, war photographer, gambler, and closet queen, has woken up dead in what seems like a celestial visa office. His dismembered body is sinking in the serene Beara Lake, and he has no idea who killed him. In a country where scores are settled by death squads, suicide bombers, and hired goons, the list of suspects is depressingly long, as the ghouls and ghosts with grudges who cluster round can attest. But even in the afterlife, time is running out for Maali. He has 7 moons to contact the man and woman he loves most and lead them to the photos that will rock Sri Lanka. 10 years after his prize-winning novel Chinamen established him as one of Sri Lanka's foremost authors, Sheyhan Karunatalaka is back with a thrilling satire. That's a quote from The Economist, and a rip-roaring state-of-the-nation epic that offers equal parts mordant wit and disturbing, profound truths. So that is the synopsis for 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida. Now, the first thing I thought of when I read the part that says ghouls and ghosts with grudges who cluster round was Lincoln in the Bardo. And I think actually that the judge references a little bit of Lincoln in the Bardo in his verdict. So we will get there. But that is the synopsis for 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida. Let's talk about Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance by Alison Esbach. Now this cover is very different. Swimming pool, floats. It looks more like chick lit than it does a, sort of serious contemporary work of fiction. Claire Lombardo is the person who has blurbed it, and she says, heartbreaking and funny, often in the same sentence. It was published May 17th of 2022 by Henry Holt and Company, and it's 352 pages. So the 2 books are about the same size, 352 and 386. Both, of course, published in 2022 because that is one of the requirements of the tournament. And here is the synopsis on Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. The summer before Sally Holt starts the 8th grade begins as a gloriously uneventful one. It's full of family trips to the beach and long afternoons at the local pool with her older sister, Kathy, which they mostly use as an excuse to ogle Billy Barnes, who works the concession stand there. A rising senior and local basketball star, Billy has been an unending source of intrigue for both girls since he jumped off the school roof in 5th grade, and their fascination with him is one of the few things the increasingly different sisters have in common. By summer's end, Billy and Kathy are an item, an unthinkable stroke of luck that ends in an even more unthinkable tragedy. Set over the course of 15 years, Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance is narrated by Sally as she addresses Kathy before, during, and after her death. We watch as Kathy's absence creates a gaping hole that only Billy, now firmly off limits to Sally, understands and might possibly begin to fill. Charting years of their shared history and missed connections, Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance is both a breathtaking love story between two broken people who are unexplainably, inconveniently drawn to each other, and a wry, sharply observant coming-of-age story that looks at the ways the people we love the most continue to shape our lives long after they're gone. So we have, this feels a little bit more accessible to me. Young people, the setting is more, familiar to me. It's a coming-of-age story, which I love, sisters, which I adore. So we shall see what the judge has to say, but certainly, based on the synopses, I would be more likely to read Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. So, let's talk about what Adam Dalva has to say. This is his introduction to the judging. He says, "Strange, after decades of omnivorous reading, to stumble onto an unprecedented experience. But I've never, before the tournament of books, hoped that a book would be bad. I even root for my enemy's work in the name of art." So that is the only thing he says in introduction before he starts talking about the individual books. But that's interesting. So he's hoping for one of the books to be bad, and I guess we will find out why. So here's what Adam Dalva has to say about The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida. "My dilemma set in because I read Shehan Karunatalaka's The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida first, carefully, and had a blast. It took 2 weeks. Despite occasional hand-holding on the part of the eponymous narrator, the winding plot, preponderance of characters, unique structuring, and pleasantly chaotic voice took some acclimation time. The narrative. Our titular Sri Lankan photographer is dead. He comes to in a sort of Bardo-ish purgatory with a bureaucratic organizational structure and is given 7 ghostly nights to solve his murder, shepherd a non-MacGuffined box full of damning photographs of state violence into the right hands, and deal with his loved ones, with his best friend Jackie a particular highlight. The magnetic second-person voice, like the lead, is impossible not to fall for." And here's a quote from the book. "You dumped everyone who ever saw you naked, abandoned every cause you ever fought for, and did many things you can't tell anyone about. If you had a business card, this is what it would say: Maali Almeida, photographer, gambler, slut." Then we return to what Adam Dalva has to say. "There are occasional weak moments. The book's first half is a bit tricky as it revs up all of its techniques and moves between reality and the afterworld. The irreverent tone sometimes feels misaligned with the pathos for Almeida that I was experiencing as a reader. Nevertheless, 7 Moons is a Bulgakovian achievement, told from a teeming afterlife of interstitial titles and constant invention with compulsive, rhythmic prose that is sustained throughout." And here is another quote from the book. "You never placed a bet you couldn't win, which is not the same as not losing. You went in eyes open, knowing all the angles and most of the odds. The odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 8 million. The odds of dying in a car are 1 in 1,000. And according to Mr. Kinsey, the odds of being born homo are 1 in 10. So that is what Adam Dalva has to say about our first book, The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida. I keep getting the Lincoln in the Bardo feel from this, the second person voice, the ghosts and ghouls talking to the actual character about what his life is and how it's been. There's definitely a Lincoln in the Bardo feel there for me. And as you heard, Adam Dalva referred to something there as a Bardo-ish purgatory. So let's look at Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. So Adam Dalva says this: And then, hoping for the worst, I turned to Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. In a way, I was expecting it to be inferior. 7 Moons is a Booker Prize winner. Notes is a book that perhaps signals, with its floating life preservers and bucolic swimming pool on the cover, something more casual. I sat down and read it in 3.5 hours, regaining myself only when I finished. I needed the bathroom and then a glass of water. The kinetic achievement of Alison Esbach's plot is remarkable, in defiance of its seeming simplicity. Sally is obsessed with her older sister Kathy, whose boyfriend Billy once saved Sally's life. Kathy is addressed in the second person throughout, and early on, Notes plays its gambit, which is reminiscent of 7 Moons' business card. Here's a quote from the book. "But 6 weeks later, you were dead. I'm sorry if that seems sudden to you, but that's what it felt like to me. That's what it still feels like, even now, 15 years later. Like poof, Sally, your sister is dead. Now go to church." The temporal setting is the 90s, that adolescent time that T. Kira Madden has called the days of private telephone lines, inflatable furniture, juicy tubes, America Online. Indeed, Sally soon enters a harrowing dynamic with Billy, who is persona non grata after Kathy's death, but reaches out on AIM. Years pass and their relationship grows complicated, but the book retains its sense of humor and scene, especially in its supporting characters. "I hope you don't mind," Valerie said. "I'm addicted." Valerie had recorded the sound of her own dishwasher before she went to Disney so she could listen to it in the hotel. And I'll admit, it was nice. Easy falling asleep like that, right next to Valerie, knowing that all her mother's dishes would be clean by morning. Then Adam Dalva goes on to say, "There are issues. A subplot about a friarhood," a sentence opener I've never written, mainly serves as time filler, but certain scenes, a dead seal on the beach, a tree that needs to be felled, have stuck with me. So that is his assessment of Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. Again, second person voice, which is interesting. You hardly ever read a book in the second person, and then to have 2 that he's judging seems unusual, but interesting, certainly interesting. Again, I'm still more drawn to this book than the other one, but we'll probably read both just to see what happens. Here is Adam's judgment on the 2 books. He says, "So both books were good. How to choose? I'm one who roots for the underdog. My March Madness bracket is busted within seconds every year. I'm a Knicks fan. Cool Runnings makes me cry. But despite Notes matching up with a #1 seed, 7 Moons' journey to the Booker Prize was remarkable, a genuine success story for a bold, brave epic. So I read 7 Moons again, kind of. I read Chats with the Dead, the original English language version of 7 Moons that was published in India by Hamish Hamilton in 2020, acquired by a UK indie and rewritten for the British audience. A further problem set in when I realized I like Chats with the Dead a bit better, though the changes are marginal. It's a slightly floatier text and less explained, which felt more aligned with Almeida's experience after his death. Indeed, my preoccupation, as my decision came due, was with thoughts on character mortality and the way both novels address their dead subjects directly. I, in recent months, have become interested in art that captures the complex feelings of loss. Work like Nick Laird's poem Up Late, or Amy Hempel's story In the Cemetery Where Al Jolson Was Buried, or Brandon Taylor's essay All About My Mother. The ugliness of death and the ensuant irrationality of it is a point in favor of 7 Moons. But sometimes, though I admire the novel's irreverence, it resulted in disconnection. In Notes, the grief dominates the novel, distorting everything in a way that felt fitting, if at times a touch over-constructed. In the end, it came down to a question of fluency in what, in Al Jolson, Hempel calls the language of grief versus fluency in the language of literature. The language of grief is ugly, denial-filled, and imperfect, which is the difference, perhaps, between a book as dream instead of a book that contains nightmares. But maybe that's complicating things too. I'm pretty sure I also picked the one I liked best. And he picked Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. So I think that's very interesting in that we did have a 1 seed in the 7 Moons of Maali Almeida. And I don't think anybody, I certainly would not have thought looking at the cover of Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance that it had a chance against a Booker Prize winner. So I'm excited by that. Adam Dalva, performed an upset here, and we have Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance going forward. So I will be back tomorrow with the next 2 books in the tournament. I hope you enjoyed this today, learned a little bit more about these 2 books, as we will see Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance going forward in the tournament against other books as they come up in the lineup. And if you did enjoy it, please click the like and subscribe buttons. I love to have your feedback and your comments, and would love to come back with more videos for you, both on the Tournament of Books and more book reviews, vlogs, and anything else I can think of in the bookish world. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk more soon. Thanks.